background is in brand strategy, marketing, and design. Binary Ventures is one of our strategic partners for the program, and I think they've committed to a bucket of hours. Is that how we did it this year? So what does that look like?
I don't have the sheet in front of me, but basically, we're trying to offer you a branding or marketing service that would be, I believe, about 5 or 6 hours worth of work. So we come talk to you, figure out if there's something we can help you with on your marketing strategy, and we might put together a marketing strategy for you, or if there's some branding that you need, maybe it's a logo, help with some designs. So basically, along those lines, if there's something we can pretty up, sexy up for you, that's what we're looking at.
Cool enough. So one of the things we should talk about in our weekly meetings this week is how best to utilize them, because you have a small bucket and it goes really fast.
But you can get a lot for 6 hours too.
You can. They're very good value for money in that respect. The other thing that I'll say too, that I'll plug for Binary Ventures, they are an entrepreneurial company themselves, right? Part of the reason they're doing this is, yes, they want to get back, but this has also been a good source of finding ongoing clients for them. Matter of fact, I think Flying Style actually came in or heard about the program through Binary Ventures, so that was great. Just like we said at the beginning, it's okay to go do business and say if you want to do additional stuff with them. One of the things we would ask is that whatever scope of work they give you, especially since they're one of our mentors and partners, you share with the managing director team in our weekly meeting. We'll review it, make sure it's thorough, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's good value for money. And I'll say this in front of Christy and Steve too, and whatever other partners there. Our best interest, we're protecting your best interest as the company, right? They're good business people, they know what they're doing, they're not going to create something stupid. We're watching out for you all. Does that make sense for everyone? I'm sure Christy will tell you more about Binary Ventures and what they do. Her partner Steve, you also see around here. Steve is more on called sales, business development, kind of end of the business. It's interesting because Christy and Steve have almost completely different personalities, so it's a fun partnership to watch. Christy's probably more involved in the program than Steve has been, to be honest. Christy gets rave reviews from the people who worked with her last year. Very talented marketing person, very personally and emotionally invested in your business and seeing you succeed. So we're thrilled that she can come out and do this session, especially early on. So without any further ado, take it away.
Thanks, Dan. That's really nice compliments. Let me just start by introducing myself, and I'm going to talk today about branding and how to get your first customers, and I want to talk from the perspective of a founder. So how many of you in here would consider yourself a designer? Right. So I know that design is a very scary thing for a founder. You know what you want it to look like, you know how you want your brand to be, but it's very hard to figure out how to do that, how to find the right people to help you, and how to make sure that you're ready to get your first customers with a real legitimate brand. So I want to first introduce you to my different brands. I started as a UX designer and filmmaker, and I hope you can see it okay. So I had to sit down. Anybody see me like about to push a cord over? Just let me know. Yeah, so I started out as a designer and filmmaker, and so that was where I started about 10 years ago. I also, another brand of mine, just as an example of branding, is I'm also a writer, and I've written 4 books, so you can find them some places. So that's another brand of mine. I'm also a Chinese student, so that's another brand. And then finally, I'm a mom. I actually have 3 kids, but I thought 2 of them were scary enough for this slide. So those are my different brands. And then finally, I would be considered the boss. I'm the co-founder of Binary Ventures and the creative principal. So like Dan said, you'll see me around a lot because I'm the one running the team that's doing the work for you. So my background really quick is in actually cultural studies. I've studied all over the world. I've been to 25 countries, West Africa, India, Europe. My family lives in India and Pakistan randomly enough, so I've been all over and studied a lot of different people. And I did that before I started this company, Binary Ventures, with Steve. And so my passion came from both understanding how people think and how people work and languages and users, and also blending that with my passion for startups. I've had my own businesses. I own currently 9 different companies or helped co-found as one of the owners. And so I'm very passionate about startups, and so is Steve. So when Steve and I started Binary Ventures in 2012, he came from a software development background, and I came from a design background. We both love startups. So yes, we are kind of a startup ourselves, but we've helped about 21 companies create their brand, and launch their brand, and grow their brand. And that is actually our slogan, is create, launch, grow. And so every company that we work with, we're looking to help them from both the branding and the whole concept, their logo, their design, their look, and then building, whether it's a mobile application or a product. We don't develop products, but we help you find developers to develop your products, manufacturers all over the world, and then helping you to grow and become that established business that you want to be. So these are our backgrounds, and I'm going to go quickly through this because I don't want to waste too much time. And then we also have a development team of about 50 developers, and some of them are onshore and some of them are in Peru. We work together as a team, and so these are our 2 leads down in Peru. And our slogan actually is, we love startups. We love to work with startups. So this is why I'm really excited to be able to work with RevTech on how to brand your company. And so whenever we start working with a startup, we have to start at the very beginning, because what you are is you're a founder. And so you have a company idea, but you don't have that brand yet. So the first thing you need to know is you need to get to know yourself, because you really can't do a brand that's not you. And so any founder can be, anyone can be a founder. And so when we start working with someone, we really have to get to know them, and you have to get to know yourself. And our favorite kind of founders, and I hope that many of you are these kind of founders, is somebody that comes from an area where you know there's a problem, and you may have worked in that area for a while, and you know there's an issue, and you're trying to solve that issue. For example, one of my favorite clients is a doctor who actually there's a problem with communication within hospitals, and so his solution is something to solve that communication problem. So we're able to go in and help him solve that problem and design something, but it's from that mind as a founder. And I hope that you all are solving problems as well. Another example would be a merchant who's solving a problem through an application that will help small merchants in the city be able to gain traction. So, and then another one would be an example of somebody who has an eBay, a great eBay following, huge, powerful presence on eBay, and so she actually wants to start her own line of lingerie. So, what problem are you trying to solve? It's a very good question to start with when you're thinking about your brand. And I know you're probably distracted by the picture in the last one, so I'm just going to reiterate. The problem with this one was that the people with larger sizes have a hard time finding sexy and comfortable clothing. And that's a very simple problem. We're solving it with the Goody Wrap, which is the everyday woman. And that's kind of our slogan for that company. Another one is actually a RevTech person last year. We were able to bring him into RevTech Paradigm, if you guys have heard of him. But Paradigm found that the problem was that he was a sales guy and he would travel the country, and he would find that people didn't know, people didn't want reviews from Yelp. They wanted to hear from other colleagues, and so he created an app to help solve that problem. And so he created an app that would allow you to tell your colleagues and anyone on LinkedIn what are the best restaurants in a new city, and you were able to trust those guys because you knew it would be business friendly, and maybe even the CEO who was on LinkedIn said he liked that restaurant. So you were able to find out more details about better restaurants to go to. So it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but it really is important that you remember why you're doing this and who you are, and then also remember what's your style. So are you funny? Are you youthful? Are you hipster? And really, I know that you may not want to bring your own style into it, but it's a really good place to start figuring out what your brand's going to be. So when we start working with a company, we figure out what are the kinds of feelings that you want to have when you're building this brand. Cutting edge, corporate, refined, high tech, things like that. So then naming your brand. Now I know all of you already have a name, so I don't have to go into too much detail, but there's an example, like last time we had Socialside, which was another one of the RevTech companies. And that name was really hard to spell, and it was also very hard to be able to find online, because the name, we didn't really know what it meant, we don't know how to spell it. So I know socialsize.com was available, but there are reasons why, because it was very hard to remember how to spell. So we helped them work through their application and not only help redesign it, but figure out a name that would be fitting and fun and simple. So we came up with FitRaise. And so FitRaise, along with them working together to figure out a name, was really helpful in coming up with something that started the whole application being understandable. Fit, raise money, and get fit at the same time. Another example is sometimes even redesigning something. This is an example of a client that came to me with this design. He wanted to have his company was about technology readiness, so he had a 1 through 9 levels of how ready your company is for being put on the market, and he wanted the name to be Derwent. Well, the problem with a name like that is it doesn't mean anything. So even if we redesigned his whole website to be really pretty, the name wasn't helpful enough. So I asked him, you do need to start with yourself and what means something to you. And so he said, well, actually, Derwent came from a river I really liked, but there is this bridge called the Iron Bridge. And we thought, well, Iron Bridge, that makes a lot more sense because that's bridging the gap between the technology and the people that are ready to use it. And so we ended up going with a logo, and I know this logo is a little old school looking, but we went with a logo that was very solid for the bridging the gap kind of concept. And the name helps people understand a little bit stronger what it's about. So naming is important. Another one would be mobile money, where we switched mobile money with that merchants that are going to be using this application to be local and to encourage local merchants. We changed it to Localtopia because it's a more fun, interesting name. And then again with Spend Boss, the same kind of name where it's a strong name, and you've probably heard Spend Boss because I know they're in this building. Another thing to note when you're starting to design and to start building that brand is to know your own weaknesses. For example, one of my clients wanted to use this name as their website name, www.blastfromthepast.com. And so he was very humble, and this is a very good thing to be when you're starting your own brand. You're the founder, you're very smart, but he didn't know anything about URLs. So I'm like, sorry, but you can't use that name. So I had to help him figure out a shorter name. That's a very simple example, but just know the weaknesses that you might have. Has anyone ever seen this comic? Okay, it's one of my favorites as a designer, and I'm going to go through it really quick and just give you the summary. But it really, keep it in mind whenever you're working with a designer to build your brand out. So this is kind of the experience that a lot, or maybe every time I do a design, kind of goes like this until I learn how to become more strong and help the founder know their weaknesses. So everything's cool at the beginning, like, oh, my old site sucked, I'm so excited, how do you help me rebrand myself? They show you your website changes, and they'll like add phrases like, man, to just kind of throw in things, make it pop more and let's be more edgy. And it gives the designer, puts them in a hard spot. So we end up trying to like make all these changes, and they start to add up. So it's like, can we switch back to Comic Sans, make limbs flare, make me more liney, just things that people ask for all the time. And then they want to get other people involved. I've had girlfriends involved, moms involved, kids involved, and I love people being involved. But just be careful of what their weaknesses are and make sure that that poor designer has some say in what's going on. You know, like the mom comes in and says, throw in some kittens, everybody loves kittens. And then you feel like all hope is lost because they're just adding their own stuff and redesigning it for you. And then you feel like this as a web designer. You're completely useless, you're a robot. And in the end, you have this monstrosity as your website, and that's pretty much you want to quit as a designer. So, and then the founder's happy, but the founder didn't really know what was good for them in the beginning. So this is just something I want you all to keep in mind as you're working with a designer. Has anyone heard of 99 Designs? Has anyone not heard of them? So there are many companies like this out there, and I just wanted to briefly point to this in case you are looking for something like a redesign of something. There are companies like this. The pros would be they're very affordable, they're easy and fast to implement, there are lots of choices, and there are lots of different perspectives. So that's really nice. But just be careful because sometimes they lack unique designs, and so it is very hard when you're going in to actually have somebody outsource and find a design for you. And there's also no relationship. So if you can, and this is how I actually started a couple years ago. I was a freelance designer, and somebody came and found me and had me design things for startups. And just go out there and try to find designers. And in fact, if anybody wants help trying to find like a young designer in Charlotte that is looking for some work, I'd be happy to help. But just, you can use 99 Designs, but I do recommend trying to find somebody local that would be able to work with you. So then again, if you can't use somebody like that, hire a designer. Now for some of you, hiring a designer makes you feel like this. You're like, oh my God, how am I going to find somebody to help me? And it can be really hard. So here I'm going to give you some hints for other things that you need to know before you really begin to brand yourself. And hopefully this will help you if you do go forward and work with somebody in your team that's designing or somebody outside that's going to help you brand. The first thing that's very, very, very important is discovering your users. Basically, the rest of this, we're going to be talking about how to understand your users. Now, I know that you all think you know your users. You've come in here, you've been thinking about this idea for 2 years. Some of you have already built your MVP, and you know who you're talking to. However, you wouldn't be here if you had already figured out everything. So the best thing to do is really go back and think, I don't know these people, and I need to relearn them and figure out who they are. And I have been, as somebody who has built 9 companies and helped others try to succeed in launching as a startup, I know you always have to pretend and act as if you don't know them. You need to relearn. Who are my users? Who's going to be doing it? Otherwise, you have this guy, and we don't know who this guy is. And so we end up kind of just having an idea that it's some business person that's gonna buy my service. And we don't really know what they are every day and how they live. Now, we use something in Binary Ventures called the buyer's journey, which is actually from HubSpot. So HubSpot does a lot of inbound marketing, and it's something that we use for some of our clients to help manage their social media. And what HubSpot does is they help us to divide up between the awareness stage, the consideration stage, and the decision stage. And also, guys, I'd be happy to send this to anybody if you want afterwards. So talking about the fact that when you launch your startup, nobody knows about you yet. You are completely new. And so you have to start by making people aware of you. And that's one of the biggest questions. How are they going to become aware of you? Because you can't help them. Most people try to start with just consideration and decision. But that's not where you're starting when you're a brand new startup. So there's a lot of different methods that we use. First, we use attracting them by blogs, social media, using the right keywords, web pages. Then we do things like call to actions and landing pages, which I'm not going to get into as much today. And then engaging with them and delighting them. But the big one is the attract. How can we even attract them to our page? How can we know what keywords to use? How can we know what social media to do? And it all comes back to understanding your users. So I'm going to show you some examples of a campaign that we're actually just about to launch, just to give you an idea. If anybody does have any questions, I think I'll have time at the end, but I'm totally cool with stopping and talking about stuff as well. So I just want to give you an example that we have for a company that is coming out in about a month, and it's called Logged In, and it's a video resume cover letter. So what it is basically the service is just, you can go on, you can set up a profile, and then you can create a cover letter by saying, recording for 30 seconds, hi, I'm Christy, I'm a graphic designer, I'm looking for work in Charlotte, and then you can do a couple about your skills if you want, but they're very brief, and then you use it as something like LinkedIn, where you can share it, you can put it on your resume, that's it, that's the whole service. So what we had to do is we had to figure out, okay, who are the people that are going to use it? Now, automatically you think, okay, there's some guy, 25 to 35, they're going to use the service and then they're going to put it on their resumes. Well, that's not really helpful in me knowing how I'm going to tell them about it. How am I going to talk to them? They're not just blogging how to get a better resumes with video cover letters or how to do video. They're not looking for that. They don't even know it's a thing. So we started creating users, personas for each one of them. So we call them personas. And we actually call them things like Ambitious Andy, Career Change Carmen, Happily Employed Hannah, HR Annie, No Job Norman, Recruiter Randy. So we come up with these names. And this actually helps us to be able to think about each of these people as we work through writing blogs and working on our social media and our SEO. So for example, this is No Job Norman. He is currently unemployed and actively searching for a career or job opportunity. He's a current student near graduation, or maybe he just graduated. His goals are to start a long-term career. He wants to buy new interview clothes at a low price, get callbacks for interviews. He wants to earn a wage that he feels will allow him to live comfortably. He wants to create a better resume. He wants to marry his girlfriend, I didn't write all this, find an internship that allows him to build his skills. There's a lot of things, like earn his jobs so family and friends will be proud of him. Those are some issues that he has that he wants to solve. He may have a challenge of poor interviewing skills. He may lack motivation or self-esteem. He may not have a college degree. There are things that we can help him look for when he's trying to find things online to solve these problems. And so what we do is we go through and this is for our internal knowledge, and this is something I highly recommend each of you do. Think about 4 to 6 different personas that are going to be using your service. So this is actually Human Resources Hannah. She's actually on the human resources side. And so we want her to be able to use Logged In because we want her to tell everybody that she's trying to hire, please create a Logged In account because this will help me see who you are, your personal skills, your talking, marketing skills or whatever before I even bring you in for an interview. What we're trying to do is help eliminate bringing in people that aren't going to fit your company culture or not going to fit the personality or skills that you need. And so HR Hannah will definitely want to use our services, but we need to know her problems. So how are we going to figure this out? The first way is to just do some guessing. So obviously you can guess around and figure out some of the things that HR Hannah needs or that No Job Norman needs. But to be honest, the best way to do it is bring people in for interviewing. It's kind of like a mini focus group, take them out for coffee, find those different people. After you start to figure out who your 4 or 5 or 6 different personas are, find those people, take them out for coffee, bring them into your package place office, whatever you need to do, and figure out, ask them questions. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What kind of websites do you look at? Do you like Pinterest? Do you use Instagram? What helps you find different solutions? If it's something about jobs, it'd be like, what are you doing to try to get a job? How could I help you? How could this service help you? But don't have everything focused around your service. Get to know the person. Get to know these kind of people that you're going to be talking about. And that way, you've got this story. And the story doesn't necessarily completely fit this person, but what it does is it helps us. As we talk, and we do this internally with our own potential customers, like Startup Sam, he's the startup guy who has an idea and has maybe has some funding, but not completely. We know his problems, whether it's in funding, whether it's in finding a designer, whether it's in needing some help with his idea. We know those problems so that when we start blogging, we'll be able to actually keep these guys in mind. So here's our no job Norman. And then when we create a book, we know, and they don't know that we're thinking this, but this book is for HR Annie, HR Hannah, or HR Annie, I can't remember, and then No Job Norman. This is the book. And so we know what we're talking, who we're talking to, and why we're saying the things that we're saying when we create a book. Or for example, now we have blogs, and without even trying, we've created all these blogs because we're like, well, obviously No Job Norman is really using this social media, and he's really interested in these topics. And so we're going to write blogs for him to help him find us. And so because we've created these personas, it helps us to know who we're talking to and who we're writing. And so within our internal, we give them something like this. It's very basic, but it helps them to remember and us to know who we're talking to. So when you write this blog, who are you writing it for? Okay, Recruiter Randy. What's your key word topic? Simplifying the interview process. We found that is a really big problem for recruiters. They're always bringing people in, but they don't, but as soon as you meet somebody, you know whether you like them or not. So we're solving a problem. So if you think about that within your own service, and it really works for anybody, you figure out your users, and then every time you start blogging or writing any content on your website or on social media, you're thinking, who is this one for? Who am I talking to? That way you're not just posting things that are really just going out there into the universe. You know who you're talking to. And so it becomes something like this. This is our simple coming soon kind of website. And here we have happily employed Hannah, and we have Recruiter Randy. And nobody knows that, just me. But that helps me to know, okay, I made sure that my website spoke to both of my favorite and main personas for this time in this campaign. And it helps just make sure that your brand stays true to the people that you're trying to reach out to. Another fun one is the style profile. So this is another example. And this is an example if you listen at all or you kind of understand your users. This is kind of a bad example of what not to do really because if you look at these and the question which set best describes you, as a girl you're like, well they all look exactly the same. And I'd love to look like her. That's about all that comes out of that. There's nothing personal in it. It didn't really address an issue. And so we worked with our customer for Goodie Wrap and said, we don't want to just have something where they all look exactly the same. We want to make sure that our everyday women aren't just one size and all different sizes are addressing things like, I want to make sure that my lingerie covers back fat. I want to make sure it's really comfortable. I want to make sure that I can wear it at work. I want to make sure that under your clothes, I want to make sure that I feel really good about this. So, and this is really kind of basic example, but what we want to do, what we're doing with this quiz, is every question is going to be honest, like which shape is you? Okay, now, what things are you trying to actually make sure that this helps you with? Not just what's your favorite style, like how can we really help address the issues that you have? And so, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can use a quiz like this and how it can help you when you're going out and sending more information to people. And also things like, now that we know the people that are going to be our sizes and our looks and not just those really thin Victoria's Secret models, we can make sure that all of our people that are on the front page of our site and all of our communication and interaction with social media is telling them, we like you the way you are and you're one of our everyday women, and so we use those kind of people in our marketing. So again, that leads right into creating a brand for them. So I like to do all of this before I even start creating the brand. That way, when you do, even if you do have to hire an external person as a designer, you already can tell them, Like, these are the people I'm talking to. These are the kind of people that I want to reach, and this is what they look like, act like, feel like. These are the important things for them. And so that actually makes designing so much easier, because you already know, you can go out there and research, okay, what are they already looking at? What's familiar to them? What do they like? So this is an example of actually a sped boss in this building. And so they came to me and they wanted to do Mad Men, like a Mad Men theme. We wanted to be like the boss, you know. And that's great, and we really liked that name, but we had to tone it down because I had actually gone and done research for them, focus groups in different large retail stores in Manhattan, and in several other places like Atlanta and Ohio. And I talked to the people that were going to be using this software, and this software is actually a something for retail stores like Coach, something like that, and the top administrator who runs the budgets for all the different stores around the country. So there are hundreds of stores, they're all different sizes, and there are budgets for each one of them. So it's kind of like a backwards e-commerce site where instead of you wanting them to spend more, you have limits. So the administrator can say, this store can only spend this much money every month on this, 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 and this, and they have limits. And so when I went and talked to them, they actually weren't these like Mad Men guys, they were actually mostly women who were very technical and detail oriented, and they wanted to be the boss, and they wanted to be in charge of these stores, and that was their personality type. And so I said I wanted to be female, and I wanted to have, or at least reach to men and women. But I think the name is, we helped them choose actually we created the name, but it wanted to be a very strong name, but not be too Mad Men-y. And at first we wanted, business, snarky, professional, clever. And so we went a little too far on the Mad Men side at first, because we were trying to figure out this concept, like, okay, we're gonna do cigars and whiskey and all that. And it didn't quite work for the females that we were trying to reach. And so we ended up doing something that was a little more just the suit and a different color thing, like the little pocket, or I got the little like necklace, and each person got something that made it look Mad Men, but personalized it to each one, so that girls and guys would be able to have that kind of part of it. And then on the main page now we have a girl on the front. So this girl really speaks to those people who want to be in charge, want to be in charge of their stores and how much they're spending, and it resonates more with the users, but we still get to keep that Mad Men theme.
Hey, Christy, they got to see the Sped Boss office upstairs.
Oh, awesome. That's cool. Yeah, so this is kind of their, their look, and everything works with that brand, that Mad Men theme. The other thing to do is branding your user experience. So, for example, once you've gotten those guys that or your personas, No Job Norman's going to have to use this, you want to make sure that your user experience works for them. So bring them in and ask them questions like, does this make sense to you? Would you add this video? And we actually timed it, how long it's going to take, and it takes 45 seconds to set up a logged-in account on your phone. That's exactly what we need for No Job Norman. People without a job, sometimes we don't, they don't have, for some reason, as much time as other people, because maybe you're busy just, doing other things, but we wanted to make sure it was really easy for them, something that didn't take any of their time. So, and another thing would be like the spend boss. Anything that you design, when you start with that brand, you know what your brand looks like, you know what your users are going to be, you can make sure that your design matches those colors and that feel. So with Goodie Wrap, anything that we do, and anything that my client goes out and does herself, I make sure that she uses our colors, she uses our logo and our icons. And it's very simple things like this that really speak volumes for a startup, because you are competing in a world that has a lot of big names, and you've got to make sure that everything you send out there has that brand presence. So that, like, for example, when we send out any kind of pitch decks, this is for a manufacturer that we're trying to get for the lingerie, everything's branded, everything's the same color, everything looks right. And for Paradigm, everything has that gold, that businessy color. And we had talked about this when we started Paradigm. It's not just going to be for every user. We're going to focus our first launch on business owners. So we want to have the gold and the blacks, and everything matches. Everything's business oriented. And it helps us to remember as we go that everything is going to be for your business, and everything's going to be for that person. So finally, launching your brand, which of course is, the big, scary unknown. You want to have 10,000 users in the first 3 months, because then you can get a VC to fund you. I don't know if you've ever heard that story, but I definitely have. So that's kind of always our goal, is to launch that brand and get a bunch of users. So I'm not going to be able to solve all your problems, but hopefully with this brand knowledge and understanding that you need to know who your users are and making sure that your brand is consistent, there are some things that you should do. First, I recommend be consistent. I'm kind of anal, but just at least try to be consistent. Everything that you send out, if you hire an intern to do your social media, if you do it yourself, whatever you do, make sure every time you send something out into the world, it has that brand, it has those colors, it has that logo, it looks like the people you're trying to reach. Make sure you do that. So, for example, with Paradigm, make sure that your coming soon page matches your future page. Make sure that your mobile version of it matches everything. Make sure all of your Twitter headers, your banners, your everything, make sure that it all matches. Make sure it's consistent. And again, like because I spend so much time on the user thing, we understand I've got to make sure that I have my female and my male business, counterparts on everything that I do. Again, with Next Table, which is the table management software for restaurants that I'm one of the owners, we made sure that everything that we did was consistent, with our colors, our look, everything. So whether we sent a banner somewhere, they always made sure that I sent it out with consistent colors, consistent logo. And that can go a really long way. That can make sure that everybody knows that you're a real company, you're a real business, you're not just a startup. So the last thing would be, and a very big part of this would be, engage your followers with social media. I just want everybody to remember this book. Has anybody read Jab, 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 Right Hook? Yes, it's a really good book, and I would really recommend it for you guys to read. So I want to just talk a little bit about what's in this book, because honestly, it's one of the best I've read. And I'm actually going to be doing a book review on Friday, and I just really recommend reading it. So this is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's the author of this book, and he says a story is at its best when it's not intrusive, when it brings value to a platform's customers, and when it fits in as a natural step along the customer's path to making a purchase. The perfect story is spun from your intimate knowledge of your history, your competition's history, and increasingly what you see on in the world and what you discover your customers want to talk about. So we just kind of said exactly what I was talking about, and I read this quote after I put together this presentation. I reread it. I was like, yes, that's exactly right. You have to make sure everything you put out there is for your customers. So, and I just excuse, the next couple pictures are just screenshots I took, actual pictures I took of the book. So they're not as clean to read. But I wanted to say, digital marketing is a very big, giant, scary place. And at Binary Ventures, we do focus on the email. We do some email stuff, and I'll talk about that, but we don't focus on much as the click-through and the Google AdWords, although that is really important. What we generally tend to focus on is growing through organic, talking to your customers and getting to know people, following the right people. And so we do more organic marketing when we're growing. So a couple of things that this book really said that I really liked and wanted to reiterate to you was be native to your platform. So what does that mean? Make sure, and it's kind of frustrating because it means that every platform's a little different, and so you can't just post something on Twitter and have it go to Facebook. You need to make sure that on every platform, you talk to that kind of people. So Facebook has different users. You're going to have different users on Facebook than you're going to have on Pinterest and that you're going to have on Twitter. Now, everybody doesn't need to have every other kind of social media. So I would not recommend that I might recommend that you get all the names for Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, social, Twitter, and Facebook. I'd recommend you get those names, but you don't necessarily have to really work on all of those platforms. Figure out, when you do talk to your users, what kind of platform they use. I've seen a lot of ones where people are like posting on Facebook every single day, and not a single person likes it or shares it. There's no use posting there. They're not coming. Or maybe you're not doing the right content, but I don't know when a dentist really needs to be posting on Facebook all the time. So I've seen that a lot. It's like, oh, I have a lot of posts, but no one's coming, and it doesn't really make sense to me. So be native and make sure that you're on the platforms that speak to your people. So some of the questions to ask when you're posting on Facebook. Facebook is very important with pictures, entertainment, shareable, and personal. Make sure that your post is entertaining, provocative, surprising. People don't like sadness, but people like to be angry or provoked or surprised, and I want to be able to share that. Make sure your pictures are striking and high quality. And I would also just, again, reiterate that make sure everything just comes from that basic stock that you have of your brand, your people that you kind of keep in mind, your stock. Even if you use stock photos, keep them those people that are your users. Make sure your logo is always visible, and I'm going to show you some pictures of goods and bads and things. Make sure it's interesting. It's got to be interesting. And then, are we asking too much of the person consuming the content? Remember who your users are. They may not want to do much, they just want to kind of see it. So make sure there's a nice big picture. Make sure it's exciting. This is a bad example. So this was the picture that they posted for this airline. And then they asked, what's the most exotic food you've ever tried and in which country? Okay, so I know there's a problem with this one. I think it's a good question and you could probably talk about it, but you should have a picture like this, which is one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. I love taking pictures of food. But like if you do a picture like this, then people will respond. Oh yeah, that inspires them. So make sure that you do consistent pictures with your words. And I know it's a very simple concept, but just be thinking about the picture is going to be a visual and they're going to catch on. And then ask one simple question to help them engage. This would be a little better. It's a very simple question. Will they say, serious question, Thor Melon or Frank the Tank? They know their audience. Obviously, they've done some research on who their audience is. They've given a very simple question, and they've shown it in this picture. So that's a very simple way to just begin to launch some things on Facebook. So I wouldn't recommend just going to Facebook and just talking about yourself and telling like, we're launching today, tomorrow's the big day, this, and this. That's fine, but you're not engaging with your users. So think about what those users do on a day-to-day basis, and if it's at all related to what you're doing. If you're in banking, you can use something that's a little off topic from banking, but it kind of pulls into banking, whether it's your budget or your finances, or what do you do after you've gotten your big paycheck? Which restaurant do you want to eat at after you get your big paycheck? There are lots of ways to pull in that topic into questions and become more relevant to your users. So this is a great one. I mean, it's just in this blurry picture, but it's a yummy picture. It's like, ooh, Twix bar. If a Twix snaps in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it still sound delicious? It's cute, clever, related to your topic, but also you know, funny for your fans just to see. So just simple, and Facebook just likes good pictures and simple questions that are engaging. Another thing to think about is using trends to throw the right hooks. So jab, 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 right hook, the topic really is about the fact that 80% of your marketing needs to be you engaging with your clients and your customers and giving them tips and information and helping them and talking to them, and not about selling them on anything. You know, if you're in finances, you would say, give them tips, give them information, help them out, ask them questions, but don't ask them to buy your product. Whatever you're doing, just give them tips and information. And then that right hook is after you jab them 3 times, you can give them a right hook and say, why don't you come try out our software? Why don't you come try this out? So make sure that most of your information, and I know it's a lot of time consuming, it takes a lot of effort, but it really helps with your search engine optimization too, because you're giving information, you're helping and helping and helping, and it helps you become a thought leader. So that actually pulls into Twitter. So with Twitter, these right hooks are important, and so you have to make sure with Twitter that it's to the point. Obviously Twitter is quick and simple. Is that a hashtag unique and memorable? Hashtags are a great way to pull into other conversations going on, to make sure that you're relevant. Does the voice sound authentic? You can't just be advertising, you also need to be retweeting interesting things. You need to be posting blogs, telling them about interesting topics, showing pictures that are interesting to them, and will resonate with that audience. This is a good one and very simple. It's actually for when, oh my gosh, Arrested Development came out, and it was a very simple picture, free at last and split in half business card. Really simple picture, and it has the Twitter for National Siblings Day, so they use one of the days, and you can always use a day. There's a National Women's Day. Probably should have hashtags some of my clients. You know, you should always try to think of those days, think of anything you can get it on, be really simple and to the point. So that would be a good example. This is also a good example of engaging with your customers. So somebody retweeted and talked to them, it was a comedian, about becoming a fan, right? And so he just tweeted back and said, welcome to the cult. And that kind of stuff is really, it's pleasant, simple, it's not asking for anything, it's just saying you're welcome here and I'm glad that you're part of my group. And make people feel on Twitter like they're your first fans right now. You know, you're your first couple hundred fans. And so make them feel welcome, make them feel like they're engaged with you. Another good one, using something like the hashtag pro tip, which can be for anything, and being clever with it. Use it for your own uses. If you want to hide something, just put it next to a pack of Skittles. No one will even notice it's there. You know, it's just clever, it's cute, and then people can just like it, remember, oh yeah, Skittles, whatever your brand is. Now this is a bad example. So Holiday Inn, and it wouldn't be a bad example on its own, but Holiday Inn intended during this whole time when they were tweeting all these things just to retweet what other people had said about them. So it was like, yay, someone talked about us, it's so great. And they didn't actually go in and talk to the person who had said, wow, it was really nice using @Holiday Inn, and saying like, we're so glad, what was your favorite part, or how can we help you more, or thanks for encouraging us. Instead, they were just bragging. Well, nobody wants to hear you just bragging. They want you to engage with them. So spend a little extra time, and anybody that follows you, retweet them back, thank them back, talk to them a little, hashtag, look at your followers and find out how you can be engaged with them. And then with Pinterest, which I don't recommend for everybody, but if you have users in the range of 20 to 40-year-old women, or even older than that, any kind of age of women, or if you have somebody, if you find that user is very engaged on Pinterest, these are some questions to ask. Does my picture feed the consumer dream? If you're going to do pictures on Pinterest, they need to be really pretty, they need to be sexy, they need to be shareable. So you need to make sure that your photography is good. Did I give my boards clever, creative titles? Have I included a price when appropriate? I don't know if any of you are doing actual price products, but if you are selling anything that are products on a continual basis, on Pinterest, it's very recommended that you actually put your prices on there, because then people know they can buy it somewhere. And always make sure that your links, every single photo has a link back to that actual page on your website. Because links in Pinterest are extremely important. So these are some good examples. This one's just simple. It actually looks like an advertisement. And Pinterest does a lot more of this kind of thing where it's a nice picture, but it also has the ad, and it has exactly what you're supposed to do with this. One simple, buy this dress kind of brand. Or again, this is Chobani, and they have a really cute, pretty picture, and then they give recipes. This is just a simple recipe of how to make this. If there are any ways that you can think to incorporate Pinterest into your brand, that's awesome. But you have to make sure that it's pretty pictures, simple, and just one call to action, or just really shareable. So this is for an example, we haven't really finished, when I took this picture, we hadn't finished this, but this is our career change Carmen, and she's one of our users for logged in. And so we're trying to do things for them like employment infographics, single mom inspiration, dress for the job, dress to be hired, and we've added stuff more. We're trying to make sure that those people can all know that we're trying to help them in every single area of their lives. So for us, we have the startup Sam, it could be a guy or a girl, and so we're actually trying to follow things that would help them out, like design, tips and tricks. Charlotte, we've got entrepreneur ideas, all sorts of things that are going to help them, and they'll be shareable for them. So it's very simple, but just make sure as you're posting things that it's really going to help your users and things that they're probably going to be looking for. And then make sure you nurture your followers. So when we do something like this quiz, now we know the shapes and sizes, but we also know, more importantly, their pain areas. We know if they just had a baby and they need to make sure that their clothes are going to fit them right. We know if they're really important, like maybe they're in nursing or in a hospitality industry where they're moving around a lot, or they're a mom, and we need to make sure that it's comfortable. But we don't just want the product to be comfortable. We want to make sure that the emails we send them fit their needs. So what we do when we use HubSpot for clients is we're making sure that we ask when we first have them sign up, if they're signing up for a quiz or they're filling out information to sign up for a product or their app, ask one simple question, if nothing else, that figures out which of those personas that you've created they fit under. So if you have 4 or 5 personas, and you say, and they do a drop down of, I'm currently unemployed college graduate. Like, oh, you're a no job Mormon, awesome. We're going to start sending you no job Mormon emails. And that's that way, anybody that fits that profile is going to receive emails that are actually right for them. So you don't have to try to send, 100 different types of emails, but you can send 4 different kinds of emails, and each one of them has slightly different information that maybe you've been blogging about, or retweeted, or found on Pinterest, or whatever, to make sure that you're reaching the right people. So, when we do actually send out newsletters, we know who we're talking to, and you can sell things to them, but you now know that these people are buying soccer sports, or whatever they're doing, so you know who you're talking to and what they're going to need. And so just remember to love your customers at all times. And so remember that everything that you do is going to be for them. And so I don't know how much time we have left because my time is not working. Well, I only have 9 minutes, so I'm sorry that I took so long. But I just want you to remember as you're going through making sure that before you even create your brand, you know your users, and making sure that everything you say and do, and even your design, goes toward them. So does anybody have questions for me? Yes?
Really fascinating. The quiz, what's the best place to present that to the users?
Yeah, it depends on the product. For that one, it's going to be like the e-commerce store when you first go on, and people will have looked at it for maybe a minute. It can pop up and ask you questions, or when they sign up, they fill it out. And because of the kind of product it is, we have to just tell them, like, we want to make sure that we reach you with our products, and so fill out this quiz. And so it's not intrusive. When, for example, with Logged In, when we have people sign up, we don't want to have like a bunch of questions to intimidate them, right? We want to make sure they sign up. So we literally have one extra drop down that is I am a student, happily employed. We don't have to use the words that we know they are, but we try to describe them in like 6 different ways. So it's just that it's so important to know, because then you're able to put them into like a persona, right? So yeah, I would definitely recommend it if at all possible. Just add that one drop down, whether they're signing up or wherever it is you can.
People want to say I'm this person.
Oh yeah, exactly. And then you don't have to. It doesn't intrude on them. It doesn't take a lot of time, but now you know where to kind of start sending what information to send them.
Is that one that goes share on Facebook with it? You know?
I don't know. Facebook changes so rapidly. Currently, this one is actually, the quiz that I'm showing you is actually integrated with Shopify. So they didn't have a quiz on there that did that, so we actually developed our own that I think we're going to be putting on the Shopify App Store if anybody wants it. So it integrates with Shopify. So then what happens is after they fill it out, automatically there's a My Showroom page that actually does only the filters, like it only shows those products to them. And then with the Logged In one, we use HubSpot, because HubSpot helps you create personas, and we just integrated that one drop down into the HubSpot thing. So each one's a little different. But yeah, I think a Facebook quiz is not a bad idea. I don't know if people are doing them a lot anymore, but if I'd have to look into that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can you touch on your process for defining a color palette?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so when we're defining a color palette, one of the things I do is after I figured out who my users are going to be, is I do research on what kinds of products they're already using. Because with a startup, you don't want to completely go outside of what they're used to. I don't want to be the same, but I don't want to be, something that's unfamiliar to them. So you start by finding, there's 2 different things I look at. If you're trying to sell your company to somebody like, say, LinkedIn or a bigger company like that, and you're also wanting to reach your users, I do research on who are those companies that I want to sell to, and what are the kind of companies they're buying, and just take a look at those logos and the designs and the color palettes. And you don't have to copy them, but just to keep that in mind. And then also look at all of the competitors that you have. So with the Goodie Wrap, it was like looking at Victoria's Secret, it was looking at Soma, all those different brands. And then say, okay, well, these are all very simple logos with some sort of icon that symbolizes them and that can be used in like a charm or, on different articles of clothing. And so I want to make sure it's a very simple logo that matches it, but is a different color. So we chose purple, which has not been used by any of them. For another company, we wanted to sell to a certain company. Now, we don't know if we're going to, but I made sure that the logo was familiar to that client so that if we do go pitch to them, and we actually have pitched to them and they did really like it, they felt familiar. Like, yeah, this could totally fit our brand. So those are some good places to start with. And then you pick maybe 2 shades of the main color and then a couple of grays, and maybe going through the process from that color to gray. And then if you have 4 or 5 shades of that color, that helps you make sure that your designer who's working with you keeps with a consistent brand. Does that help them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you have any knowledge if you bought an entire site template, the different licensing and the rules that, however you decide to use the template, the rules behind, any one of the
Like a WordPress type thing?
yeah, or if you bought a designer made an entire template and you got the regular use, which is $30, and then there's the $2,000 licensing fee. What really constitutes when you have to pay that $2,000?
And that's a really good question. What I found, and what I've practiced is purchasing, if you're gonna be, the only reason you would need to buy the $2,000 license is for if you are actually reselling it to somebody else as like, here I made this template basically, and you can go in and break it, tweak it, change it, and then reselling it. But what we do for our clients is we don't charge them for the template, we buy the template, and we're not calling it our own template, we're saying we bought this one and we're tweaking it, and so we only buy the $30 or $40 template if we ever like say for WordPress or Shopify. So there's no need for us to go ahead and purchase the license because we're not reselling that template.
What would be an example of like you just licensed it out and just gave them all the design files?
I don't really know, and I've read those things so many times, and I've never come across it. For the most part, you can just purchase the $30 one and use it. You're not claiming that you built it, and so it's not yours. And if somebody were to go into the back files of it, they would find the person that originally built it. So it's not like you're trying to steal it and resell that. You're just using a template. And I definitely recommend using templates. You know, you can redesign them, refame them, and they don't have to say, you know, made by this theme. You definitely want to change that, and there's no problem with that. So I've never come across any problems with just buying a $30 theme, especially since we don't sell that, you know, to people. We say this is the theme we're purchasing, and then we're just going to help fix it up to make it yours.
A question about discovering the personas. Do you suggest when a client works with you that they come in, that a client comes in with 4 to 6 personas, or prefer that you have the conversation first and then they go out and find them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually people know who their users are. Obviously, you all know who your users are. So I come first learning. So it's like, I want you to tell me who all those people are. You don't have 4 to 6 personas, but you know who your users are. And so I'm actually helping you with all the knowledge you already have. You've already talked to people. You already know there's a problem. So what we're just trying to do is help clean that up and really organize that into like nameable, you know, story-filled people. And then if we find, especially if we find there are gaps, one of my favorite kinds of founders is somebody who is one of their own users. If you're making something that solves your problem, you're a user. So that's great. You know, that's your first step. But then making sure we fill in those gaps. So when we did Logged In, it was like, you know, I don't really know recruiters and what their day-to-day needs are. So I brought in 2 or 3 recruiters, I think it was 3, and asked them, what are your day-to-day problems, you know, all these questions, and then finally, how can this product help you? And hearing from them, like, oh my God, this product would save me 1 to 2 hours per person I'm looking at. This would be awesome. That's like, okay, that's great confirmation. You are definitely one of our users. Sometimes it's like, I'm never going to use this product. Okay, maybe they're not a user. Keep them kind of off to the side. Don't waste time on them. So yeah, you'll definitely have ideas when you come in. And all my job is to make sure we clean them up and figure out which ones are real and make sure that we've asked questions of each one. Any other questions?
Super quick one. What are some quick best practices in terms of entering a conversation in a channel that's not yours? Like commenting, you know, as a brand, interacting with someone's post on Instagram or Pinterest to somehow help them, you know, if they post really expensive shoes in the house, so to see how get that. How can we do that if we're not
Really expensive shoes, and you're selling shoes, so you're trying to.
savings thing?
Right.
We help people save for goods.
Every single one is different. You know, sometimes it's not about selling your product. Sometimes you find somebody that may actually notice that they post some things about that, like buying stuff, and you can, if it seems appropriate, or you could come in and maybe say that you agree or favorite it, and kind of start that way and introduce yourself. And there was an example actually in this book that was somebody posted a song lyrics, and then Green Mountain Coffee like said, oh, we love that song, and they wrote some of it, so they were like kind of tweeting back and forth for like 5 times, and then eventually the other guy was like, hey, I've never tried your coffee, but I'll be sure to. You gotta be polite. And they were like, that's great. What's your send us your address. We'll ship you some for free. So it was kind of like, by that point, it was like if you had been in the room having a little conversation. So I would definitely not come in and try to sell your services, but I love it. I mean, you probably do too. If somebody just, if a name brand likes something I've said, and then makes a comment completely not trying to sell, it's really nice. Yeah, so I would start with that, and then if they do respond back, you can be positive and say, say like something, but I definitely take it easy, do it slow. That's not quite high. It's fun in this area, in this world, because the startups, every single startup's different, every single user's different. So, but I'd love to talk more about that. So that, in case we run out of time, that's the kind of stuff I would love to come in and help you with. If we're, like Dan was saying, we're trying to make sure we bring a lot of value. I know it's only 6 hours, but you're gonna get a lot in that time. What I'd love to do is come in and talk to you, find out where there are gaps in your product or your plan, and if there's something that we can help from a marketing side or a design side, or simply updating your UX, whatever it is, to make sure that it's going to fit your end user and be a great MVP. Like, we want to help, and I think that the hours I've checked, they're really going to help with one thing. So pick something that we can help with, but we can have continuing conversations, and we'll be around. And so during the time of RevTech Labs, if you have any questions or just want some consultation or answer questions, like, we're here for you. That's what we're here to do. So I'd be happy to talk on the phone or shoot emails back and forth to any of you. Any other questions?
How about a round of applause?